In the heart of the village of Nkoso, where the red earth met the endless sky, there lived a boy named Kofi. Kofi was the son of Yor, the village's most respected drummer. Yor's hands were said to carry the rhythm of the ancestors, and his drumming could summon rain, heal the sick, and even calm the fiercest storms. Kofi grew up in the shadow of his father's legacy, with the weight of expectation heavy on his small shoulders. From the time he could walk, Kofi was given a drum. It was a small, hand-carved instrument, its surface etched with symbols of strength and unity. Yor would sit with him under the great baobab tree, teaching him the rhythms of the land, the heartbeat of the village, the song of the river, and the whisper of the wind. But no matter how hard Kofi tried, his hands could never quite match his father's. His rhythms were clumsy, his beats uneven, and every time he faltered, Yor's face would darken like a storm cloud. Kofi, Yor would say, his voice sharp as a whip. A drummer must be perfect. The ancestors are listening. The village is watching. You cannot shame our family. Kofi would nod his throat tight and try again. But the more he practiced, the more his hands trembled. The drum, once a source of joy, became a symbol of his failure. One year, the village announced the Great Drumming Festival, a competition held once every decade to honor the ancestors and celebrate the best drummers in the region. The winner would receive a sacred drum, said to hold the spirit of the first drummer of Nkoso. For Yor, this was more than a competition. It was a chance to cement his family's legacy. "You will win," Yor told Kofi, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You must win." Kofi's heart sank. He had seen the other drummers in the village, boys like Kwame, whose hands moved like lightning, and Ama, whose rhythms were as smooth as honey. He knew he couldn't compete, but he also knew he couldn't disappoint his father. For weeks, Kofi practiced from sunrise to sunset. His hands grew calloused, his shoulders ached, and his head throbbed from the pressure. But no matter how hard he tried, his drumming never improved. The night before the competition, Kofi sat alone under the baobab tree, staring at his drum. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "Why can't I be good enough?" The next morning, Kofi woke before dawn and slipped out of the village. He couldn't face the competition. He couldn't face his father. He wandered into the forest where the trees whispered secrets and the air was thick with the scent of earth and leaves. Deep in the forest, Kofi came across an old man sitting by a fire. The man's face was lined with age, and his eyes sparkled with a wisdom that made Kofi feel small. At the man's feet was a drum. Its surface cracked and worn. "Why do you cry, young one?" the old man asked, his voice soft but firm. Kofi hesitated, then poured out his heart. He told the old man about his father, the competition, and his fear of failure. The old man listened in silence, his eyes never leaving Kofi's face. When Kofi finished, the old man picked up his drum and handed it to Kofi. "Play," he said. Kofi shook his head. "I can't. I'm not good enough." The old man smiled. "The drum is not about perfection. It is about the heart. Play what you feel." Kofi took the drum and began to play. At first, his beats were hesitant, but as he closed his eyes, he let the rhythm flow through him. He played the sound of the wind in the trees, the laughter of children, and the tears of a boy who felt he was never enough. When he finished, the old man nodded. "That," he said, "is the true rhythm of life." Kofi returned to the village just as the competition was beginning. The square was filled with people, their faces eager and expectant. Yah stood at the edge of the crowd, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. When it was Kofi's turn, he stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding. He looked at his father, then at the crowd, and finally at the sacred drum waiting for the winner. He took a deep breath and began to play. At first, the crowd was silent, but as Kofi's rhythm filled the air, something shifted. His beats were not perfect, but they were raw and real. They told a story of struggle, of fear, and of hope. By the time he finished, the crowd was on his feet, cheering and clapping. Yor stood frozen, his face a mask of shock. But as Kofi stepped down from the stage, his father pulled him into a tight embrace. "My son," Yor whispered, his voice trembling, "you have made me proud." Kofi didn't win the competition. That honor went to Kwame, whose drumming was flawless. But as Kofi walked home that night, his father's arm around his shoulders, he felt a sense of peace he had never known. "Father," Kofi said, "I'm sorry I wasn't perfect." Yor stopped and looked at his son. "Kofi," he said, "the drum is not about perfection. It is about the heart. And today, you played with more heart than anyone." From that day on, Kofi played not for praise or perfection, but for the joy of it. And in the village of Nkoso, his drumming became a reminder that true strength lies not in being the best, but in being true to oneself. If you love the video, please like and share. Hit the subscribe button. Don't miss another video from Spirit of the Ancestors.